Hey Marco, let's have AI do our project.
That's a great idea. Let's do that with customer.
Yeah, I have a customer in mind, ISS.
And let's have actually a real team.
Yeah, and let's give them all the AI tools they want to have.
That's what we're gonna do.
That will be interesting. Show me the money. Where is the money in this?
Where is the money?
Is there?
That was actually one of the questions I got it actually at least from ISS as well. Like okay, so seems interesting. Many people working together with AI. People are having kind of nostalgic trip that okay, when we were working together, we were quite effective, yeah. But is it really effective or is it just fun? And also like asking that, is it that we get it cheaper, like the end product, or is it better in some way, or do we just get it faster, or what is it?
Yeah, of course, in everybody's mind when talking about AI is the scary thing that do we need programmers anymore? So is this replacing the programmers, and we don't only need a couple of programmers who are using Collab AI to solve all the problems? I don't think so.
No, I mean, there's very little evidence, or actually all the evidence that we have is actually quite vice versa. We need the developers. We need the people coming up with ideas how to solve any kind of typical business problem.
Yeah, we still need human input, but it doesn't mean that this is complete failure as well. It doesn't mean that okay, we are playing around with AI but having no success. We are having benefits, and they are measurable benefits. But so what do you think? What is the most important benefit in here?
Most important benefit.
Yeah, going straight to the
Yeah, that's
things.
like really easy question.
Is it like increased quality, or is it like we are able? While you are thinking, let me give you my perspective. My perspective is that because lots of work in everywhere is like trying out things and doing. Nobody is like doing instantly perfect, especially in IT world, where we don't have products, we are building things, and they are not instantly perfect, which means that we are doing something, we are iterating, we are expanding, we are having lots more ideas and so on. And that means that we have to do lots of trying out and do lots of errors and do lots of things that are not that productive. That amount of those, we are able to do bad things much quicker. We are able, one of the measurements, we are able to do much more mistakes in a day than before.
That's actually quite well put. I mean, in terms of what's the value. So what that means, if I translate to not talk about mistakes, but actually outcomes of then that is that, well, customers, users will get basically a solution that fit better their needs. Absolutely. Because we basically fail on all the different ways how to actually achieve that faster.
And we are able to move on to the further generations. So instead of having like generation one thing as an output in traditional project, you could argue that with Collab AI project, the generation which comes out, it's much more than generation one, it's generation X, right. Which means that it has been iterated much more. there has been like, we have seen many failure points in there. We have tried out things and found them not well. We have tried out things that we have found out which are good, and we have gone forward with those ones. So it's like, it's increased quality.
Yeah, better fit to purpose. I think that one of the things in the early kind of before we jumped into this way of working, I think that we had like these small kind of, let's say, local benefits of, okay, I can now generate X faster or many versions of it alone, and that helps me to do whatever I'm doing as an individual. But one of the key problems especially in the software development world, or actually, well, product development, is that we have these different phases that, okay, now we design, then that design, somebody needs to develop it, then when it's developed, somebody needs to deploy that into production to actual users. What we actually did in a way with our team is that we took all these steps and made it as one thing to do in a team, end to end, which is one way of saying that it gives us speed if we choose to kind of go through straight off that line. But we actually do it as in a way that you just described, iterating, meaning that we don't go like in a straight line from A, B to C, but we actually try out and find the best possible fit. So we get both like time to value or time to market, but also like better fit to purpose, because, well, it's something else than it would have been with the kind of single flow.
What you described here as a first design and then development, and that sounds like a waterfall model.
Yeah.
And now we are like going forward from waterfall model to like doing more things at the same time. Isn't agile supposed to be like that?
It's supposed to be like that, but if you look at the most agile implementations, what they seem to be is that you have some level of, okay, let's think what are the options and solutions. So what's the problem worth solving? Let's think about what are the different solution options, and let's then start the agile project, which typically just is that, okay, then we have already a backlog of things to be developed. Maybe they are not fine-tuned, I mean, they're not fine-grained, and we discover within those boundaries. But if you take a look at our Collab AI, there's no backlog. There's no requirement management process before what we are doing. There's no, so in a way it's a kind of agile end-to-end or something that, as you said, what agile is supposed to be. That's being said, even you would have agile typically, like, let's put it in more concrete terms, you would have like a Scrum. So Scrum has these time boxes and so forth, but we don't need them. It's too restricting to be in this 2 weeks time box. Even we would just do, if we would do all these steps, but we would put it in 2 weeks sprints, 2 weeks would feel slow.
Yeah.
Stupid, kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, and again, we are at a faster pace. For example, let's take the stereotypical clumsy old way of doing prototype. You spend a couple of weeks, a certain amount of money, some workshops and some desk time and some developing time, and in a couple of weeks then you have a prototype. One single prototype, if we are doing the extreme example. Let's hope it's a good prototype, because that's what we are in a go, no-go decision, whether to go forward with that one. But wouldn't it be much, much greater if we would like have tens or hundreds of prototypes that have been evolving at the end we have like this very refined prototype or prototypes, and then we can make go, no-go decision based on those.
Yeah, we would have much greater set of options that we may think of, and we may even get inspired by them. That's actually what happened with ISS as well. And when we did such an experiment where we actually tried to create multiple prototypes, since the language models are very, very language oriented, meaning that they are quite strict in the terms, And when we use the terms like describing what the user might want to do, want to achieve, we got versions that nobody had thought of. That, hey, oh, it could be like so.
Yeah, and why not client is free to change their mind.
Yeah.
They might get new ideas saying that, okay, now you have thought out something that we didn't even realize, and now we know we want to do something completely different, and that's okay, because now we can pivot in the new direction.
Quite and fast, and also like, and there's no maybe such a kind of fear of missing out in a way that, okay, what could be the other option? Because, well, we have already 40. How many you need? How do you want to have another 40? Wait a day, and we will have another 40. Yeah. So it's so there's obviously this options thinking kind of, okay, you have multiple options. You can choose you can make better decisions on where to spend the money. There's the time to value. There's a bit of the quality part in terms of that, okay, it's really a good quality for the user. I think the quality part is also that when we are actually when we do this everything in such a way that everybody's looking at it, whatever is being done, you actually get a lot of feedback about, oh, it's supposed not to be like so, or why don't you do it like this and this and this way, which basically means that if you compare that to other ways of working, we typically have separate review sessions.
Yeah, and that's what is currently known as eternal beta. So it's like there's been released a version, and to be safe, companies are saying, okay, this is a beta version, we can still change that, okay, and this doesn't take that away. There could be a beta, but this is much better beta. So it's like we have already thought out some things that in the previous world would come across in the beta phase.
Right. When the users would actually give the feedback.
And then you have another point, which is that now that you have a finished project and now you are taking that into the production, of course there's this ramping up time so that the new product is starting to produce the benefits it was supposed to do. It doesn't usually perhaps do everything instantly, so it's like it's starting to go there. You maybe do some fixing, there's some beta and so on, and then after some point it's like it's fully functional, it's doing its purpose, and now it's like starts paying itself back. But we would argue that in Collab AI produced things we can move this closer because it's better in much slower time. So it's like it's ramping up faster and it starts producing value much quicker.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that we discussed also within ISS, because there was a kind of a business person asked that, okay, does this mean that we get this solution cheaper? And even I was about to answer that, but actually another ISS person was answering on behalf of me that it doesn't matter. Even it might be even more expensive because there's more thought and more work or more individuals being part of it doing that. But since we get it faster, it gets paying back faster, and typically we do only solutions that pay back in such a way that the production cost is kind of who cares if it was like X amount more, because the payback and the time to value is better. And I think that's a good way of thinking any software project. If you need to concentrate and focus on only the cost side and managing the cost, to me it's a typical sign that you are not managing the value. You are not even maybe aware of it. What is it? And of course sometimes it's due to the fact that it has been taken so long that when you eventually end up being in the market, you can at least argue that, well, the market window shut down, or it's not anymore there. So whatever was your projection of the value is kind of, there's no point of comparing that anymore.
Yeah, and you wouldn't, if there were changes, you wouldn't have had time to like react to those.
Yeah.
You were building what the first one prototype was,
Yes.
and then you start building it, and the world is going on by
Right.
itself, and something else is happening. But then, if you ask, well, what is going away? What happens less? So there are like savings, things are saved. I think what happens less from the very practical point of view, there's less fingers touching keyboard. There's less waiting for like customer to give out their opinions and waiting for reactions and comments and so on, or waiting for others to produce things. In general, waiting for something. And like also waiting for people's brains to move slower because like the external things and procedures are limiting them. That's what's being saved.
I think also like when I'm thinking that what happens less is that there's less kind of, well, there's term already for that called code plating, meaning that if you're tinkering a part of a solution, bigger solution, and you're responsible for that part, it's a component or set of features or whatever it is. Since that's your responsibility, you want to make it good. And you really want to make it good. Yeah. And sometimes making it good, you're over processing something that is good enough.
Yeah, you are trying to make perfect, which
yes.
is the enemy of good.
Exactly. But if you're working in such a place where you actually work together across all the different parts, somebody at some point may point out that, hey, we've been spending on this problem and tinkering this part with the help of AI, this and this amount of time, and is this really worthy? I mean, should we do something else?
Yeah, of course, in reality, for example, when working with Colapai prototypes, they are really ugly. They don't look like products at all. But that's not the point. You get the idea, you get to try out things, and you get to click things and see how the data behaves and see how the processes behave and so on. You are not making the pretty like colors and pixels or whatever. Time for those comes later when we really start to know what happens.
That's a really good point, because I think that when I'm trying to explain what's Collab AI about, when you're one team and they're working on the same computer and so forth, then they start asking, okay, what is that AI does there? And I think that I really need to make it concrete for people because they haven't been part of the experience and experiments. The way that I'm describing it, that imagine that you come up with an idea and you want to understand that how does that look like, and you can just like get how it might look like. And or if you have a trouble of I have this and this type of idea. For instance, when we were doing the ISS pricing tool, in the pricing tool there's a set rules that how the pricing should work. And when we like describing that, and we were thinking that are there some corner cases that we haven't thought of? Well, you can just ask it from AI. Yeah. Are there corner cases? Come up with corner cases that we haven't thought of. And once you have done that, you get feedback. Okay, those type of corner cases. Then you start thinking that, how would it solve this type of scenario? You know, that you have a certain price for a certain type of customer at certain time frame, only on Sundays, and How would our solution be able to cope with that type of scenario? Well, you can type it in and see. And so the AI is kind of everywhere. It's not that we do this one thing with AI and everything else we do like other ways. It's like constant, continuous kind of a conversation or co-creation, not only because we are creating like prototypes with AI, not only like conversations of ChatGPT. So it's kind of everywhere, and that's why it's kind of hard to tell that, okay, since we're talking about where's the money, where the money is how much of the money is coming from the AI part and how much of the money is coming from just the collaboration part of people.
Yeah, if you start thinking about when we started the project, our first idea, let's make a project with help of AI and use all the AI tools you can. And now we are talking about this new kind of model. And it's like, okay, but can you tell me that what AI tool should I use so that I save money? And our message was that, okay, it's not about that. It's using AI tool set to help with more faster way of doing things. Are we able to do collab? Is there collab AI without AI? Just collab.
I mean, that's called mode programming. I mean, we're basically copying on an old method in a way, and there's like even like research regarding that method. So answer is yes, but I think that how AI is changing that is since its speed of creating stuff, bad or good or bad stuff, but stuff, it creates us. It changes the dynamic, because then you have a capability to produce kind of anything out of thin air in matter of minutes when we are talking about digital stuff. So then it's more like, okay, since we have that capability, we have a better reason to involve more and more different people, different disciplines, like not only software people, but like business people, to the same conversation, because they can see what it means. When they say that, okay, I want to try out this type of decision if we would decide to do so and so. Okay, here it is. What do you think? Oh, would you like to have a feedback about your business idea from the AI? So it changes a lot of things that has been there previously and has been somewhat used by the software professionals, like pair programming or mob programming or different type of.
And it's like there's no saying that if you have a hammer, if you're holding a hammer, all problems look like nails.
Yeah.
But it's like this is vice versa. You are building things, and then you have this toolbox of all kinds of new cool tools that you are able to do things faster. You have chainsaws, or you have whatever woodworking tools or whatever.
And they're changing all the time. The stuff that we were using a couple of months back, they were like, okay, that's not that useful. And now when we take a look at that, oh no, it's pretty useful. So since the tools are moving so fast, giving recommendations of individual tools is kind of, it's hard and somewhat pointless.
Yeah. And in June, for example, we were having this session. We were like showing things that we have come across. Some people could have been disappointed when we weren't saying very actual tools or like advertising that this is the tool you should be using, because we knew that was June. Now when we are recording, this is September, we have totally different tools. We have new and better tools. And when you are watching it, this could be whatever. And then you have new and even better tools, but still the method of using AI and use that to help and like be productive with these ones, that is going to stay.
Yeah. And it comes also down the fact that when we discuss about different customers about our findings, they start typically a conversation that, okay, I'm really keen on finding if you have found a AI tool for X, like AI tool for managing my time or my calendar or making new presentations or whatnot. And one thing that I've told to those people, I mean, as part of when we discussed, okay, what we have actually found out, that what's the way how we actually use these different tools, then they realize that, so you're saying that if I only use these AI tools individually, I'm probably creating just a huge queue of stuff to somebody else who was not using AI. I'm like, yeah, probably, because most probably you're doing something that is not the end product. You're doing a part of something, and you're actually just pushing. If you are really productive, what happens is that you just shuffle that stuff to somebody else's table, and if they don't use AI or if they have clumsier AI, or so maybe why don't you, rather than do that, come together
Yeah,
and
take
try to
them
do
in,
it together.
come here,
Yeah,
and
and
we
let's do
can
it.
work together.
Yeah. So and then maybe even the AI tools that you're going to use are different, because you actually realize that, oh, if I would use only that AI tool, it would just generate that piece. But actually, your thing and my thing together, oh, this would be even more greater thing to do.
And that's not limited to programming as
No, not at all.
For example, when I was saying earlier that we are like doing pixels and coloring later, I know many UX designers are like mad right now, but it's like you can do also collaborative design.
Yeah, absolutely you can. And we actually tried a couple of different things. One of, for instance, I was in a group with using this Collab AI, and they were actually basically they were creating an event for learning. So there's no programming or none of that, and so they had that goal that, okay, we want to create an event which engages people to learn new stuff. And that was the problem they wanted to solve together. And they were capable of creating that event material, ads about it, and so on, in a matter of 2 hours of that session where they also were taught about this method. And when I asked that, okay, this was productive because there's quite many people in the room, and what if you would have everybody done their part, and and they were like, well, we had reserved 2 weeks for this. so they were kind of blown away, and they're like, so this is not only for programmers. It's like, and I was like, I wasn't expecting that to happen. I was happy enough for them to actually just to try it out and just to see how it works. And what they actually did was that they split in the middle of that 2-hour session already to 2 collabs, and they tried to work on 2 different problems in parallel. But and so they came up with new ways of solving problems together that I wasn't introducing them. That okay, this is how you.
Like we have been saying, this is evolving thing, and we in the IT company as Solita, there's lots of things we can utilize this in. It's programming, it's design, and it's like education, sales, HR, whatever. But it's like it's not even limited to IT companies.
Yeah, actually, that's something that, because I was asking from ISS that what is your takeaway regarding the project. And I really like there's also Sami. So ISS Sami was saying that we're gonna try this out to bring in new people in. Yeah. So their thinking is that they have an existing team, and they gonna collab AI in that existing team with a new member coming in, and switching drivers and navigators. And this person first, of course, starts as a navigator. But soon as they want to see how fast those persons can kind of actually fit in and start being the drivers, or fitting as a navigator, giving suggestions and learning from the context. And their thinking is that this is gonna be much better for people coming in than any kind of e-learning, any individual kind of, or even group work that is for you coming part of the company. Of course, they're gonna do also those pieces, like, so that people get to meet other functions or other parts of the organization and learn about the organization, its mission and vision and values and whatnot. But I mean, this is like, it's kind of interesting that they're gonna do it kind of in that kind of context.
Yeah. And again, they are using AI tools so that they could, like, for example, provide the companies stacked information as AI tools for them to use. This reminds me of like when we had in our team, there was one member who was away for a week on sick holiday, and when they were coming back, we created for them an AI assistant, welcome back to work assistant. And there was like information what had happened during the previous week, like transcripts for meetings and documents and whatnot. And they were able to get up to speed, talk with AI, and like, okay, now I'm up to speed, I know everything. And as an added benefit, that tool is not going away. So it's like, for example, in ISS for new workers, they have like welcome to ISS AI tools. They are able to use those during their work, and it's like it's staying with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I'm actually quite excited about to see the different contexts now and how creative people get in this when they start experiencing this. Because many people that I talk to, they have like used their ChatGPT like once a month. They ask a question and sometimes like, okay, it's not that useful because it didn't know who's the president of Finland or something like that. And when they actually are part of this type of group work, then they realize that, oh, this is a conversation that continues and continues and continues, and everybody can bring their own perspective, and oh, this is so much more than having a individual chat.
And we are building things on top of things. First we started with ChatGPT, then we realized how to use assistants, and then we realized how to have AI talk to AI, and then we had assistants talking to assistants and creating new things, and then we had like agents and so on. So this is evolving all the time, and who knows what's happening in the future. We could have like millions different AIs, and that's a little bit like anthill. Things are happening, and we as humans are there like guiding things and having our own unique perspective. And this starts to sound like sci-fi at this point.
I think it brings up one more value, show me the money. So why would companies need to actually start investigating or doing something like what we've done or whatnot? I feel that obviously the space is moving still fast, and it's probably something that there will be always the next version which might be even better and might solve a new problem. But if you are part of this phenomena of AI and try and do it kind of in everyday working life that we've done with our method or whatever method, you are understanding better the capabilities, you're understanding better what you would like to expect from these tools and where do they fail, and actually where do they succeed, rather than being like instructed by the hype or media outlets telling you things that may or may not be true. So I think that's the knowledge value. We shouldn't count that down, even it's like not like profit on on your score sheet.
Yeah, but it's like value of money is increasing, and it's like that bubble is expanding.
Yeah. There may be like even greater questions that we're gonna ponder later. So I was just thinking that what do we think that is the core and what's gonna be written about this in the history books and all that?
Yeah, 10 years from now, when we are looking back, we have our own house AI, and then we are like looking at these videos saying, oh, look at those are so cute. It's like what we were thinking back then. But yeah, that's for another video.
Yeah, let's save it for that.